Hi everybody, I just wanted to finish doing this lecture here on Napoleon. So here we are with part 3. Napoleon takes over right at the end of the French Revolution, and you've probably heard of him. When you hear of him, you usually think of a little short guy. He's portrayed as a military genius in most popular media, and this has some truth, but when it comes down to it, Napoleon was not actually that short. Keep in mind, everyone was shorter back then, so he wasn't like, you know, like a little, like, I don't want to say a number because there are a lot of short kids in my class, but he wasn't like a midget or anything, or I'm sorry, a little person or anything, but he was definitely, you know, about average height. So anyway, this is a guy who grew up on Corsica. It's a little island right off the coast of Italy. It is a French possession, and he manages to get into the French army as a result of the French Revolution, where they're focusing more on it being a meritocracy. In other words, who you are and what you're good at as far as that, and not just a thing where you have to be a noble. He goes up through the ranks of the army, eventually ending up distinguishing himself in combat against the British in Egypt. He's invited back by some of the same guys that had started the revolution in the first place, guys like the Abbé Emmanuel Sayes, who had written What is the Third Estate? Well, all of a sudden, this same guy is like, hey, you know what we need? Napoleon to come over and just become a dictator. So, I mean, he doesn't say that. He doesn't say dictator, but basically to stage a coup d'etat and run the government. So his first order of business after he's taken over is to reconcile with the Catholic Church. He wants to put things right, end the de-Christianization the Jacobins had started. And here he is. He's on a horse. And he's portrayed here very heroically. You might recognize the artist here. It's the same one who did The Death of Marat. This is Jacques-Louis David, and he is thebomb.com as far as French classicism of the 18th century. Heroes of the Revolution, and he's also famous for his portraits of Napoleon as well. Anyway, Napoleon is often portrayed this way. This is another pose we identify with Napoleon. Although if you look at any general of this time period or a statesman, it was kind of a classic pose. It wasn't really indicative of anything. Thing is though, dude, after Labor Day, you don't wear white. Also, you might want to think about some Spanx. Just saying. Under Napoleon, what's it like in France? Well, he's kind of a jerk. He's really, really good at, like, army stuff. He's not so good at, like, women's rights. In fact, they are given no rights under his so-called Napoleonic Code. And he rolls back, and he's like the Walmart of freedom of speech, because he's rolling back advances that were made. Although with Walmart it would be prices. It's that creepy little smiley face that leaps around that seems to be sentient. I don't like that. He's famous for crowning himself emperor. The Pope was going to crown him. He took the crown away from the Pope and put it on his own head. And then he takes it and he says, here, I'm going to crown my wife, Josephine, as empress. This is met with kind of like, huh, as far as the crowd goes. Because you go like, well, is this guy like a member of the Enlightenment, or is he a dictator, or kind of both? It's a little confusing. I've actually had my students write papers on this in the past. It's a good topic. He saw himself as a continuation of a Roman Empire, hence the whole classicism type stuff with the way he liked to see himself portrayed. I mean, obviously he's not in Italy, but he is in France, and he sees his empire as such. By 1810, he controls most of Europe. And you might be like, Mr. Oliver, actually you didn't talk about any of those battles? Well, how about this? Remember when we talked about the French Revolution and everybody was at war with France? Napoleon takes over, he beats them all. Seriously, that's all you need to know. For this year, I'm not worrying about details with Napoleonic battles. So just worry about he controls most of Europe, only at war with Great Britain. Okay? So he says, look, I can't beat Great Britain. There's this big battle, the Battle of Trafalgar. He's defeated there. The British Navy defeats him. A good story, actually, because the British rear admiral that's in charge of the fleet is a guy named Horatio Nelson. And Horatio Nelson is a straight-up G, and you can't teach that. He is on the deck of his ship, and everybody, usually during a ship battle, you're not like, oh, you know, hey, I should wear something that makes it very clear I'm in charge. And you might want to think like, well, why? And that's partially because you don't want to be a target, because if you kill the leaders, you know, the generals, the admirals, maybe it'll be harder for the forces to keep fighting. But Rear Admiral Nelson is like, I'm a boss, that's the way I dress. So he comes out in his full colors. He's leading his guys to victory. They defeat the Napoleonic fleet, which is good, because if Napoleon had won, they probably would have crossed the channel and invaded England, and he would have taken him out of the war. So this guy's a major hero, not Napoleon because he lost. I mean Horatio Nelson. But then, sadly, he had been killed in battle. He had taken a shot to the chest. So everybody's like, well, what are we going to do with homie? We got to get him back to England so we can give him, like, you know, a big funeral and stuff. This guy's a war hero, but he's sort of dead. So how are we going to preserve him? Because, you know, out at sea, it's not always the best for preserving people. So they say, what can we have to preserve people? What about rum? So they put him all in the rum, and they're all like, that'll preserve his body until we get back home. They sail back home. That's not actually, I don't think sailboats have a steering wheel like that. I think they have that big wheel where they just go like, so they like whip. But do they whip? I mean, can you whip? Like, I bet ship captains can whip a lot of whipping. Anyway, Napoleon says, look, after, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the story. So they get back to England, and they're all like, oh, we better, because they're British, we better open up this barrel full of rum there, governor, because that's got Admiral Nelson in it. And they open it up, and there's no rum in it. And like one guy, you know, is like, oh, ghosts, a ghost ate it. I'm like, no, a ghost did not eat it. The sailors were still drinking the rum. It was like, British sailors, you need to calm down. You know there's a dead body in that cask of rum. You can't just be like, oh, like, well, I got to get my drink on. Kids, don't drink. Because if you do, there's probably a dead person in it, and you're drinking their blood. Anyway, that story really had very little to do. It's a good story, though. Napoleon makes it illegal to trade with Britain because he couldn't beat him. So he figures, well, fine, I'll just make it so nobody can trade with them. And that little nation of shopkeepers, that's what he calls them, trying to make fun of the fact that they're super industrialized and becoming a major economic power, we'll knock them out of the war economically. Problem, Napoleon, it doesn't work because everybody is like, well, we want to trade with Britain because they got cool stuff. In fact, Britain even has a counter blockade where they are like, yeah, so we're just not going to trade with you. And it hurts Europe more than it hurt Great Britain. In fact, the Tsar of Russia is like, Napoleon, you is not doing good. I am being critical of you. So Napoleon's like, oh yeah? Well, maybe I'm not so good at ruling my people, but what I'm good at doing is fighting my enemies. So that was a French accent. It was not my best one. I'm just going to be real with you on that. Napoleon decides that he's going to go invade Russia. Kids, if you learn one thing from this class, don't invade Russia. Russia is a very big country, and they will like straight up keep retreating as you enter. And next thing you know, you're trapped in the middle of the winter because they just keep retreating and they keep burning down stuff so you can't steal their farms and stuff. Your artillery's not working and everyone's cold. True story, I had a kid once ask me if they invaded the North Pole. And I said, why would you even ask that? And they said, 'cause Santa. Because they were talking about this thing here. Spoilers, that's not the North Pole. Anyway, the severe Russian winter causes heavy losses for Napoleon. And you know how it is. When you're down, everybody else declare war on you. And they do. And they say, look, Napoleon, we're going to exile you. Oh, that you're going to exile me too. Elba. Elba? No, not Elba. We're going to exile you to Elba, which is a little island off the coast of Italy. And he's like, well, I do like islands off the coast of Italy. That's where I was born. Again, my French accent is not as slamming as it often is, so I apologize for that. Anyway, so they exile him to Elba, and they think, all right. Now you go, wait a second, Mr. Oliver. How the heck are they going to exile homie here? This guy, like, he was like, you know, starting wars and conquering Europe and stuff. What's up with that? Well, real talk, he was like a gentleman's thing. This is now, we're into the 19th century, and this is how you deal with people back then. You go, oh, well, he is an emperor of his people, and we will show respect to him. Like, well, yeah, but he like conquered Europe. And like, well, we will exile him, but we will still pay him every year a salary because he is, after all, an emperor. And there are people like, what? Napoleon comes back from Elba. He's not happy being exiled. And he's like, oh, let's go. So once he's back, he washes up on the shore. He stole a boat. He wasn't like a fish. He got off the boat, I'm sure. And while he was gone, they'd restored the monarchy. They got a new king that Mackay in his book calls Fat Old Louis XVIII, which is kind of mean, I feel. I mean, he is fat and he's also old, but that's still a little mean. And Louis knows about this. He's like, Napoleon has escaped. I better send my army. So they send the army, and they're all waiting for Napoleon, and Napoleon's all like, yo, that's the way it's going to be. Well, I'll tell you what. If you would fire upon your own emperor, just kill me now, bros. And guess what? His army is his army again. The soldiers lay their rifles down, kneel before him, and say, we will follow you, Napoleon. And Louis is like, back in Paris, he's like, what? What is this ground? I'll send more troops. But every time he sends troops, same thing happens. And Napoleon starts marching all the way back to Paris. And along the way, more and more people start joining him, guys that were sent to stop him. So Louis XVIII's no stupid. He knows how it went last time that there was a Louis when there was a non-favorable climate ruling in Paris. So he bugs out. And Napoleon returns and says, hey, everybody in Europe, I've decided to forgive you. And everybody in Europe is like, whoa, wait. We beat you and we kicked you out. And he's like, yeah, but I am back. And I forgive you. It's all good. And they're all like, no, can you not? So they attack again. There's a big battle. It's the Battle of Waterloo. Waterloo! I was defeated, you won the war. That one. And the British and the Prussians defeat Napoleon. This time he is exiled much further away. Here's Europe for scale. There's Italy. Here's about where Elba was, somewhere in this area. Now he's down off the coast of Africa on the island of St. Helena. He will not escape from this one. He will only live a couple of years there before he dies. But he will write his memoirs where he talks about how awesome he was and how everyone else was stupid. I respect that. Oh, one more thing. I totally forgot to say who the guy that defeated Napoleon was. The guy that defeated Napoleon, at least the guy that usually gets credit for... JK, his name is the Duke of Wellington. Alright, cheers. Bye-bye.